Hey everyone, it's Rob in the Abyss, and we are into year 1973. And as you see the years progress, you're going to start to see more and more options of films because, in my opinion, the 70s was the best decade of film. There was just so many options. And I use the word film because I think today they're movies. Film was, of course, filmed on film, but also because of the way they did it, the originality, the uniqueness, the creativity. You don't get that as much today. Once in a while, you'll get something that's pretty amazing, but back in the day, it was almost every film every year. There were so many options, and in '73, I narrowed it down to two epic films that are just classics and have their place in history for their own unique reasons. So I'm gonna get right into it and start with the first option of film, my runner-up, which is the classic Exorcist. And once again, we talk about in other episodes about how you're on a film set when you're on location in different places. And in the cover here, you see these famous steps that you can still go visit at Georgetown, not the university, but the city of Georgetown, right there in Washington D.C. They still exist. But The Exorcist was released on December 26th of 1973, and it had such mixed reviews. It forced people, in a sense, to want to go watch this film. So people waited in lines in the horrible weather to see it two, three times. And there was the rumors of people fainting and vomiting when they were watching it, or even people having heart attacks and miscarriages. And is it true? Yeah, it could be. Then again, is it part of the publicity to get people to watch the movie, right? And then people were taking their kids to the movie, and that, of course, caused a conflict about should have been rated X, because back then rated X was like our NC-17 today, and it got an R rating, which people believe that Warner Brothers was able to work out so more people could go see the film. But this is the film that paved the way to horror films being a strong genre like The Omen and Amityville Horror, etc. And what's cool about the Blu-ray is that it gives you the original theatrical cut, but it also gives you that never seen before cut, which now they call the director's cut, with the spider walk and things like that. The spider walk was filmed about a month before release, and it was cut out at the last second because the director felt that it was too soon in the film to reveal those kinds of things, but then later on put in the director's cut. So it's kind of cool to have both, and I'm glad they include both because I like movies the way they were released, but it's kind of neat to see a different vision or version, if you will, when they released that. But Linda Blair, she was so good and believable. It was really hard for her to break out of that mode and really get a career beyond being Reagan. Classic film. Of course, during the Halloween time, it's a great film to watch. But just a classic. And if you get an opportunity to check this out during the Halloween time or even before, do that. My number one is the classic Sting, and I have this cool steelbook version of it. It puts Robert Redford and Paul Newman once again together. They had done Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid with the same director, George Roy Hill. And once again, the creativity of the chapters and the story of these guys being the con men to set up the mob boss, who was played by Robert Shaw. And you get to see two of the best supporting actors in film history, in Charles Durning and Ray Walston, in this film. And they, of course, are in other films down the road as great supporting actors. And then you get to see a young Eileen Brennan in there as well, who, of course, went on to have a great film career, Private Benjamin, etc. But just as film actors, we always talk about the continuity and how acting is really about the connection between two actors. I always talk about acting's like relationships. If it's going to be good, the relationship has to be good. If it's bad, it's the relationship's bad. And Paul Newman and Robert Redford really had that chemistry and continuity, and really worked well together, and they create such a strength in that relationship, and it reflects, of course, in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, but it really comes to fruition here in The Sting, which is one of my probably top 10 films of all time. It's phenomenal, and it's great, and for me, it was my favorite for 1973. On the music side, it was a little different. 1973, the biggest album to come out was, of course, Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. And for those who know me, know I'm not a huge Floyd fan, but that album definitely has its place in rock history, and it's phenomenal. Not my favorite. Houses of the Holy by Led Zeppelin came out in '73, another really, really good album. The song remains the same. Over the Hills and Far Away, which is an awesome song, is on that album, but not my favorite. I ended up narrowing it down to two, and I've kind of gone back and forth right up till this recording, and I think I know which one I'm going to go with number one. My runner-up is going to be Genesis, Selling England by the Pound. I'm a huge progressive rock fan. They call it prog rock, and basically that is, longer songs with different changes, very melodic, longer guitar solos, longer times with the song length, very poetic lyrics. It's funny because in the acting world, we always talk about the script is secondary to the relationship. For me in music, I think that if you get really strong lyrics with really strong music, and then you get all that put together, it really creates some amazing music. And that's what you get with prog rock is you get these amazing lyrics that are tied in with this amazing music, and you put it all together, and it's pretty incredible. This is Peter Gabriel's heyday in Genesis. He did 5 albums with them, and to me, this is where they're really reaching that peak. I mean, there's so many good albums before, but I really like this one. You have the Cinema Show as one of the songs on there. Firth the Fifth, which is a legendary Genesis song, and then of course my favorite Genesis song is on here, Dancing with the Moonlit Night, which to me is just amazing. And yeah, Phil Collins was in the band at this time, but he was the drummer. And he was only a few albums away from taking over with lead vocals, but at this point he was the drummer, and Peter Gabriel was on the vocals, and then of course you have Tony Banks, and you got the rest of the guys, Steve Hackett, etc. But it's a really good album, and it's a great listen all the way through with all the different changes and the lengths of songs, and so if you haven't listened to it, check it out. I know a lot of people know the modern day Genesis, but check out the early stuff. It's pretty good. Which brings me to my number one, which is Billy Joel's Piano Man. We all know the hit, right? Piano Man's probably the song that took Billy Joel to the next level. But on a smaller scale, you have Captain Jack, which is on some of his greatest hits, but not as popularly known as Piano Man. A really, really good song. But then you have songs like You're My Home, which is a song that he had written about the girl he was dating at the time. And he even says to this day, you could basically talk about that song with any relationship you're in. And then one of my favorite Billy Joel songs is on this, which is The Ballad of Billy the Kid. And a lot of people don't realize this, but early in his career, Billy Joel wanted to be a screenwriter. He wanted to write scripts for film. And then, of course, got into the music side and kind of took those ideas and put it into his music. And The Ballad of Billy the Kid is one of those first songs that was written more as a screenplay that became a song. And he even says himself, ignore the lyrics because they're completely fiction. The story of Billy the Kid in the song has nothing to do with the factual stuff that happened with Billy the Kid, but it was his idea of how this movie would be put together, which eventually became a song. And that's what's kind of neat about this stuff, that we as the listener, or we as the viewer, accept with what we're given, right? We don't sit there and overanalyze. We assume there's a reason why we're watching what we're watching, or we're listening to what we're listening to. And, you know, in 73, before the internet and finding out information, you know, you had to just, this is the way it is. And so even though Billy the Kid wasn't hung in real life, he was shot in the back by Pat Garrett. In Billy Joel's song, he's hung at the end. We don't question that. We might go, huh, that's interesting, but we don't question it. We accept it because it's the artist giving us what we want to listen to or what we want to see. Now, fast forwarding and knowing the information, it's kind of neat to know that he was basically just writing a fictitious movie story about Billy the Kid that ended up being a song. And I, once again, I like that kind of stuff because that's the creativity. It doesn't have to be literal. It can just be, it is what it is, and enjoy what you're watching. Enjoy what you are listening to, right? And so it goes back to The Exorcist, right? You know, a lot of, can that happen? Is it real? Some people believe it is. I don't necessarily know, but as a film viewer, I can watch it and accept it. You know, with the music, I can listen to it and accept it, and that's pretty cool. That is why we are artists, because we paint the picture. People get to look at it and decide what they think about it, and that's pretty cool. So those are mine for 1973, Billy Joel's Piano Man, and then the classic, The Sting. Please leave your comments below, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you tomorrow.